Peggy, should we go ahead and get started?
Let's go ahead and get started. And just for posterity, so that everyone knows, we are recording this meeting so that we can share it with folks who could not be here today.
Okay, well, I've got about 1 minute after 8, so let's go ahead and get started with the Chamber Legislative Committee meeting. I want to welcome everybody. My name is Jeff Canisi, Chair of the Legislative Committee for the Darke County Chamber. And we have a fantastic topic today that I'm fairly certain a lot of us on the call today have probably personally been affected by. I know I've heard from other business people in the community that have maybe faced this challenge. So very, very excited to hear what the speakers have to say about unemployment fraud. Prior to that, though, let's try and get some updates from Peggy from the Chamber. So I'm going to turn it over to Peggy real quickly here to get some Chamber updates.
Yes, we are excited about a whole bunch of things going on. In April, we're going to actually be contacting a lot of our businesses here in Darke County who have not been members. So if you know somebody who's not a member of the Chamber, please reach out to them. I also wanted to very briefly, and I just saw Kara already is logging on, and I'm going to give a second here. I was contacted last night or yesterday by Andrea Townsend and Kara Allred about a program that's going to be available. They're applying for a grant here at Greenville City Schools, and it will allow maybe 6 or so interns to participate in a program this year. Thank you. Participate in an IT internship this summer, and the funding will actually be available for a reimbursement of most of the salary, and it's a very exciting program. So if you are interested in learning more about that, you can contact me. Probably be better to contact Kara, because that's all I'm going to do is tell you to contact Kara Allred. And then mark your calendars for the last thing I've got is May 21st. It will be our annual meeting. We're very excited to be in person at the Greenville Park for lunchtime for a great cookout, and be able to get together and actually see one another. And I believe we're going to have some live music and great food. So that's all from me.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. Appreciate the updates. A lot of good things going on with the Darke County Chamber. One housekeeping item, our next meeting will be scheduled for April 29th. And so for those who are able to participate, mark that down on your calendar. Now I'd like to turn it over to the Vice Chairman of the Legislative Committee, which is Katie DeLand. Katie will be doing some introductions of our speakers this morning, and possibly if we have any Q&A, she'll handle that as well. So I'm gonna hand it over to Katie.
Good morning. Well, we appreciate, I think Jeff mentioned it, with this was a very organic Zoom. We heard from so many people in Darke County with questions about unemployment, so many, fraudulent claims, and it's obviously widespread. Even Governor DeWine has been hit with the same problem. So there's a lot of questions about what to do, how to prevent this, the next best action steps. So we are very appreciative to our state delegation, and especially President Huffman's office, who I think is joining us by phone today, in coordinating with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. So today we have 2 employment specialists, labor attorneys, Juliane Barone and Bruce Madson. So thank you to them very much. And I think Nikki Cooper is on as well. Hi, Nikki. So really, we're going to turn it over to them. They can kind of give a brief, update on where the state is, what to do. And then I know we do have times for question and answers, and we have several of your questions already. So let's turn it over to you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Sure.
Peggy had asked that I start with a brief overview of the 3rd federal stimulus package. So I'll just go through that briefly, but my name is Juliane Barone. I'm legal counsel for the Office of Unemployment Insurance Operations. Bruce is our policy guru and go-to, and we've worked together closely throughout the course of this pandemic. He works closely with the federal legislature and other partners to make sure that we're all interpreting these new laws and leveraging technology for things like combating fraud and getting benefits to legitimate customers. The third federal stimulus package is called the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. We were lucky, as the third package, it was more of a straight extension of benefits. So the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, or the Program of Last Resort for people who aren't eligible for traditional unemployment, they have gone from up to 50 weeks of benefits to up to 79 weeks of benefits. And the entire package expires in Ohio on September 4th. In traditional unemployment, the extended benefits, which are also fully federally funded, go from 24 additional weeks on top of the normal 26 to up to 53 weeks through September 4th. Governmental entities, employers, and nonprofit employers have full federal funding of benefits. It went from 50% funding to 75% funding, so it was an increase. Our federal pandemic unemployment compensation, or you may know of it as the $300 add-on each week for people that are eligible, that continues uninterrupted through September 4th. Our premier layoff aversion program, Shared Work Ohio, continues to be fully federally funded, as does the first week of any unemployment recipient's benefits, because in Ohio, we opted to waive the waiting week in state law. There is a program called the Mixed Earner Unemployment Compensation Program. I'm not sure if you've heard much about it. It hasn't been fully automated yet, but it is available for paper applications, and it's being automated. But this is for individuals who are eligible for traditional unemployment compensation, but they have self-employment earnings of at least $5,000. If they can prove that, then they'll get an extra $100 a week on top of the pandemic unemployment compensation. And then the final two things I wanted to note were the federal government said that the first $10,200 of unemployment benefits are not taxable for year 2020. So that could cause residents to have to correct their tax forms if they've already submitted, or they can, disregard the first 10,200. And information is available specific to that on the IRS website. Then finally, since our topic today is fraud, I wanted to let you know that the federal package did include $2 billion for states to increase their detection and recovery measures for fraud. And Ohio looks forward to leveraging that money and continuing the good things that we're doing. I can pause for questions, but one note, the governor's office and our office did create what's called the Public-Private Partnership, or the P3 team, and they've been very much engaged in fraud detection, fraud recovery, combating fraud as their primary goal. So in the coming weeks, we've seen a lot of changes, positive changes towards shutting the front door and not allowing people, nefarious individuals, to claim benefits.
Okay, does anyone have any specific questions for Juliane regarding the third round of stimulus? There's, with each package, there's just different nuances, different parameters there. So you can also always send questions in the chat. Sometimes that's better to, do more discreetly. So we can wait for that, or, Bruce, why don't we turn it over to you and we can kind of start the next segment.
Basically, intent is only to be involved in the Q&A. I'm not doing a presentation. So,
okay. Well, good. Then we do have some questions.
Hmm.
Just, I guess, kind of an overview.
Mhm.
What are the best things? So when employers do receive, a fraudulent claim for, employees that they either don't have on record or aren't unemployed, our law enforcement is actually on Zoom today, and they've been very helpful in providing guidance too. But what are the action items that an employer is supposed to take when they receive that correspondence?
Well, the first thing obviously is to let us know. It is very important that all potential fraud is reported, and I know that was initially extremely difficult for employers to do. As a result, we established a online portal that allowed the employer direct reporting of fraud. And initially, it was for individuals to report when they suspected that they were involved in or their identity had been stolen. But the large number of employer cases that were being reported, we established an online method. So since we went live, online reporting portal, we've received 247,000 identity theft reports. Okay, that gives you a sense of the scale that we're dealing with. 69,400 reported receiving a fraudulent 1099-G, where they received it in the mail that indicated that they had received some type of benefit that they actually had not received. In addition, 13,000 employers have uploaded 44,500 records for individuals that were fraudulently reported that they caught on their billing statement or their notifications for fact finding. So it is very important that we immediately be notified as quickly as possible so that we can ensure that any payments that have gone out, we attempt to recover, or any payments that may be in the process of going out are stopped. I want to note that this is not the result of individuals penetrating the unemployment system to obtain this identity information. Fraudsters are obtaining identity information from the dark web and from previous large, if you remember over the past couple of years, there have been notifications of a few very large breaches that have occurred, like in retail and some other sources. And that information is available for purchase out on the dark web from various hidden sites that law enforcement is involved in trying to shut down. But it's out there, and it's international. People are accessing this from other countries. People are accessing this in organized crime, and are attempting to obtain this fraudulently reported unemployment benefits from all kinds of sources. So as Julie talked about with the P3 initiative, we've brought in individuals from the private sector with specializations in fraud detection, and from banks and from accounting firms and large corporations that deal with payment processing, to be able to identify the ways that these fraudsters are working and shut them down as quickly and as efficiently as possible. We've never seen anything of this kind of scale, and part of this came about because when the PUA program, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, was created, we have virtually, states had nothing in place to be able to provide these benefits. The law did not provide for any way to verify the self-reporting of individuals' earnings, and it opened the door for fraudsters who had probably always had some of this information available, but it never really saw this as an opportunity. And it hit states at a scale that we have, never seen anything close to. So states have had to scramble to implement a variety of new methods that we couldn't really talk about while we were doing them, because it was an ongoing battle between fraudsters identifying the methods that we were using to catch them and finding new ways to try to get around it. So we're making headway. We're making very good headway. The new instances are going down significantly, but we're working our way through the numbers that have already hit the system. Julie, do you have anything you want to talk about with this?
Yeah, just echoing what you're saying. For practical purposes for employers, we encourage you to return the request for separation information, regardless of the fact that maybe your employee is still working or it is not your employee, and just notate on it, fraud/identity theft, so that we can continue to keep a record of these as we work through the fraud flags. What we're doing right now that Bruce alluded to is we're stopping the payment by putting a flag on the claim itself so that no money goes out the door. We're trying to do that as early as possible. So no money will go out during the 10-day period where employers have to respond to us. So that's a very important piece. He also mentioned a portal, and there is an employer-specific portal as well as an individual portal that employers can upload Excel spreadsheets. If you get multiple, requests for separation notices where your employees are still working, for example, and they might have been the victims, you can do that on their behalf. And certainly, if you are in a place where you think you're not getting through or you're not being heard, you can reach Bruce or I, and I take a lot of law firms' emails each day where they've been victimized or their employees have been victimized. We can get them over to the proper place in the benefit payment control unit. Finally, I noticed on the Q&A that you sent us that someone said they weren't getting through to the hotline when they tried to call. There is a fraud-specific dedicated number, and that is 833-658-0399. And Nikki can follow up with this information afterwards, but that is a line that we created specific to employers and others who, let's say I received a request for separation notice for Bruce and I was named as the employer. Well, I'm not an employer. I'm certainly not Bruce's employer. And so it's hard to go to the portal and report because I don't have the full SSN. So in that instance, I would want to call the hotline and report that, so a fraud flag would be placed immediately.
There's two levels of importance to their reporting. One is to shut down the fraud and stop any further payments from going out. And two, the second is that if a fraud has occurred and we can determine that it was fraud, we want to get those charges, if any payments went out, off the account of the individual employer. So, so that if you are a victim as an employer of a larger scale fraud, it doesn't affect your future experience rating for your taxes. So it is very important to, as soon as possible, get those cases off your individual charge.
Okay, thank you. And we did have a follow-up, Bruce, for you. We had someone ask, what are the best steps in the appeal process if you've responded to a fraudulent claim as a fraud, but have now received notice that the claim was still approved? I don't know if you follow that. So best steps for an employer if they've appealed the fraudulent claim, but the claim still went through and it was paid out. I think is kind of the situation that this person is facing.
Yeah. And, you know, and that happened a lot in the very beginning, particularly because we were overwhelmed. I mean, the just the sheer number of claims that were coming in exceeded the capacity of us to adjudicate them. Each of the claims when a fraud is reported have to be investigated by a person. You know, it isn't something that we can just fully automate. We have to make a determination that it was actually fraud and not just being represented that way. And so it's in those cases where it has actually been paid out. The employer just needs to report and respond to any requests for information. It is, you know, as we catch up to adjudication of these, and it goes through appeal and it's determined to be fraud, then we can get them off the individual employer's record. But there were several reports at the very, you know, especially early on that, you know, I told you that this was fraud and it still was paid. And those were cases where we had a number of adjudicators, but the scale of the incoming fraud claims just, you know, was like a tsunami that overtook us. Right now, you know, in our just in terms of contact centers, trying to make sure that we can handle the load, you know, we have taken on like 800 contracted staff, you know, in addition to our regular staff, just to be able to handle the volume. It took us a while because each of those, there isn't like a company that has contractors that fully understand unemployment insurance and how it's processed. So all of the individual staff had to be fully trained. And I'm not offering that as an excuse, but just as an explanation that the adjudication is a complex process and it requires a good deal of knowledge. And we had to scale up dramatically the number of people who could be able to investigate these claims and be able to dispose of them appropriately for, you know, based on the law. So all an employer can do is continue to is let us know, respond to requests for information. We are rapidly working our way through any backlogs to be able to catch us up to the real-time determination of these cases. We've made dramatic strides in the last 3 weeks, particularly since the P3 group came on. I think that they've provided a lot of technical assistance that has helped us work through our backlog of claims. But there is still a number that are in adjudication that are in appeal that will have to be worked through. And there again, the way that the waves hit, we hit the initial wave and then we go through and eventually as we dispose of them, there's a second wave of appeals that gets caught up on those that found their way through the initial. So, we can apologize for that, but it is something that we're working through as quickly as possible.
Right. And I know our Chief Deputy Whitaker is on, and I don't know if he's can unmute himself. He mentioned in a previous meeting that, hi, good morning, that they actually also want this to be filed locally, criminally. Is that correct, Deputy Whitaker?
Yeah, we're encouraging anybody who has experienced the crime is identity fraud in addition to the fraud against the state and things like that. But individually, when these folks find out that they've had their identity stolen or used, we encourage them to contact their local law enforcement, or the employer could do the same depending on the scale of the theft or the experience. I will tell you that the purpose of the report is really documentation for the victim of the crime. The reality is we're not likely to solve this crime because of the complexity of it and the fact that a lot of the perpetrators have multiple layers of ways to protect them from being discovered. They perpetrate the crimes from other countries where they're protected. But at least by filing a report with local law enforcement, and for employers that want to share this with their employees, they should contact the law enforcement agency where they reside, because that's where they're considered the victim of, is their home or their residence, because it's their personal identity. And just a couple of things. These don't seem like big numbers, especially when I hear the numbers from the state. But Darke County Sheriff's Office, I only have the numbers for the Sheriff's Office. It doesn't include the police departments across the county, or the city of Greenville. But we only patrol or service the unincorporated areas and then the small villages without police departments. Normally, we average about anywhere from 15 to 20 identity fraud reports a year. And so far in January and February, we've already done 35. So we've exceeded our entire our year. And it looks like, that I don't see that changing anytime soon. And then last year we did 20 reports, but I'll tell you 11 of those came the last 2 months of the year. So, and that's when we had started encouraging people, hey, if you have identity fraud or have been a victim of unemployment fraud, call us, we'll do a report for you. And the victims and the employees will sometimes need that report to correct their credit with the big 3 credit reporting agencies and things like that. They want to have some sort of independent proof that they've been a victim of this identity fraud. And that's the point behind it. It's to help restore their credit, which unfortunately for all of these people is going to be, it can be a monumental task for them. And unless somebody else has questions for me on a local level or from a law enforcement perspective, I'll leave it at that for now.
We appreciate your partnership, and I wanted to let you know, Sergeant Whitaker, that we are trying to create an email box specific to law enforcement so that you can continue to work with us if you need additional information. Maybe you need to know if there's any monetary harm in a particular instance, or if it was stopped at the front door, or potentially partnering with the Office of Inspector General on these items. We're going to get a letter out to law enforcement specific and try to do that without getting it to the public so that we don't have other people using that email, but stay tuned on that.
Yes, we also recently engaged an individual who was a previous U.S. attorney, and to try to engage some of the various, not engage, but to coordinate some of our communication between the various law enforcement entities that are involved in these fraud efforts, because this is generally led by the Department of Labor's Office of the Inspector General. However, there are Department of Justice, there's a number of federal agencies and forces involved in coordination with state law enforcement to be able to attempt to track down some of these larger fraud rings that permeate the nation right now. So it is a complex partnership of forces that are necessary to try to track down, as Sergeant Whitaker said, these are well-protected fraudsters.
That's unfortunate. In that line, are there things that employers, I know you mentioned, Bruce, that this isn't, this wasn't, vulnerabilities within the state of Ohio or, ODJFS software, that this is a much larger, problem on the dark web. But are there things that an employer can do or people that, I guess, best practices to help prevent this? Are there any suggestions or preventative measures to help combat this?
There's not a lot to do to be able to address information that's already out there. I think that a lot of it's common sense to try to prevent any more information from going out. Basically, security precautions, not responding to requests for information from sites that you aren't familiar with, making sure that any kind of communications with individually identifiable personal information are secured and not excuse me, transmitted electronically outside of secure networks that you're familiar with. It's all, you know, basic common sense. There's nothing that I can really say specifically that an employer can do to prevent this from happening to them. It is, unfortunately, there's a lot of information that moves around the internet for a lot of different purposes. And it's just important to always be cognizant of the any ways that information is transmitted that has personally identifiable information on it. And that's something that we need to continue to be vigilant about. I know at the state level, we have a lot of precautions to ensure that we don't inadvertently even put information out there that could compromise people's identity.
Sure, thank you.
Mhm.
So just back at the county level, another question that we had, you know, is there a better, how much vetting goes through the county ODJFS office, the county JFS office to, you know, and I don't even claim to know any scope of your job.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of questions are, isn't there a better process? Isn't there a way to, you talked about a 10-day period where employers can appeal or affirm that this is a legitimate claim. Are there other county level actions that can be taken, you know, a better vetting process locally?
The county departments of Job and Family Services are not involved in the delivery of unemployment insurance benefits. They are they work with the reemployment of clients who receive unemployment benefits, but it's after the fact, you know, and they are not our employees, you know. There has been a lot of discussion about whether there should be in-person determination of individuals' identity. At one point in time, you probably, if you've been around a while, you would recall that we used to have unemployment offices or, you know, employment service offices in all the counties. And we were forced to close those over a number of years just based on cost, because we couldn't afford to keep 88 individual buildings and offices open. So we had to go to an online kind of system. All states were pretty much faced with the same situation due to just the availability of funding. One of the things that was discussed when we first were hit with this fraud was to make people come in, bring proof of identity to the county offices and have that established. The unfortunate fact was we were dealing with hundreds of thousands of individual, millions actually, you know, have filed claims. And when you start getting down to the logistics of making them come down to the county office, you're talking about lines that would be, you know, hundreds of people long in many of the offices. And, you know, during a pandemic, trying to deal with the fact that most of the offices didn't have staff. They were working from their homes. So it was very difficult to come up with any kind of solution that would engage the county offices. We've talked about this for the future. One of the things that we're trying to address is, are there better ways to be able to have on-site determination of identity? But we do have the capabilities for individuals to be able to submit proof of identity online and then have staff being able to make those determinations. That's something that we're scaling up significantly. We want to be able to ensure that people can do it via telephone, take pictures of identity information, submit it to us directly so that we can make some quicker determinations. An interesting thing happened that we didn't expect early on was when we attempted to shut down some of the fraudsters. They're very brazen. I mean, they in some cases, they would actually contact their one of our state legislators and to complain about their claim being shut down, even though they're not a real person, they were a fraudster. And you know, it was really unbelievable the degree to which they would persist in trying to gain access to these funds. You know, it was quite an experience that has resulted in a lot of new layers of precaution that complicate the process, maybe slow down people getting their benefits, but it's a necessary part of trying to shut the door to get these funds from going out to criminals.
Yeah, and thank you for your work. You know, we realized that this was kind of, you know, just to your point, just kind of a tsunami of problems, and point when you guys were also doing software updates, I think, internally within. So a series of just, you know, horrible circumstances, but it does sound like there are better parameters, better barriers put in place, a better process established. You mentioned a portal and the secondary phone line. We will make sure that we get this out to all the members today. Are there any, Nikki Cooper, who you may remember used to be an aide to Representative Susan Manchester, is now with ODJFS. She is a good conduit between constituents and the department. And I think, you know, we can leverage her if you would have follow-up questions or specific cases within, you know, for you or your employers or employees. So we can, Nikki, not to exclude you, but we will definitely use you in your relationship, and we appreciate that. So unless there are other questions, I think we've covered kind of the basic, you know, what to do, why is this happening, how can we prevent it, what safeguards have been implemented to stop this. So I think all of that's been covered. But again, if anyone on this call has follow-up questions or more specific areas of interest, absolutely let Peggy know, and we can coordinate with ODJFS. But I guess without further ado, thank you again, Bruce and Nikki, for joining us today. Thank you to President Huffman's office for facilitating this. I think these are always good sessions just to kind of clear the air and to get as much information out there as possible. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. And again, if you have questions, you know where to find us.
Thank you, Katie.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I didn't know if any of our legislators that might be on wanted to give just a quick update to everybody on what else is going on while we have a few minutes. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm trying to scroll through the chat or through the list, and it's hard sometimes too.
I know Representative Powell texted me a few minutes ago. She wasn't able to join. They have a few key budget votes today. They're all in Columbus.
Yes.
I don't think any of our delegation is on, but we can absolutely let.
Hey, Katie, this is Adam Polable from President Huffman's office.
Hi, Adam.
Hey, I can give just a brief touch base if that's helpful.
Sure.
Sure. So as most of you are probably aware, we are in the thick of budget season. The Senate just passed the transportation budget yesterday evening. We're hopeful that we'll see a House concurrence vote later today, I believe, so we can get that to the governor's desk, and then we'll roll straight into the operating budget, which is House Bill 110. That's already under review in the House, and they should get it over to us in the Senate here in a few weeks. And those are sort of the two biggest things. Obviously, we had the override vote on Senate Bill 22 to provide some legislative involvement in the health orders, so that will take effect here in 90 days. Those are probably the main highlights. You know, if there are ever any questions or any way we can be helpful in the future, feel free to reach out to us. So.
Okay, thanks, Adam. And again, I know you were very key in facilitating this group today. So thank you to President Huffman. So, okay, well, I guess with that, everyone have a great day, and let us know if you have any follow-up questions. But thanks to everyone involved this morning.
Thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Bye.